Hello my friends, I'm Bianca, the Ticking Time Bomb. Today we have a special guest with his own YouTube channel to talk about his three. James, welcome to the 3 Watch collection.
Oh, thank you, Bianca. I really appreciate the time you've taken out to include me in your channel as well. It's exciting to have another Perth-based YouTube channel about watches.
So with your channel, how did that all begin?
Well, I think it's like a lot of people who around a few years ago, where some of our other hobbies were perhaps put on pause because of COVID. I sort of had this free time available now that I was usually spending on other things. And at that same sort of time, I was now starting to discover that this world of watches wasn't just something singular for myself. It was this global thing and more even Perth-based as well. And I thought, well, I quite like this creative process of doing something new. I'd never made sort of videos before, and I like doing creative projects as well. And I found it's just an outlet for my sort of passion for watches. It's also a very good excuse to buy more watches than I really would normally ever buy for myself. And it's just been something quite impressive, actually, and quite exciting, because I get to be involved in this community worldwide, and I get to make contacts like this, which I never would have done so if I hadn't started that channel.
Now, I've spoken to a few watch collectors, such as yourself now, and everyone seems to have their own take or philosophy when collecting. Is there something that you stick with?
Yeah, and I'm finding it's an evolving idea, this philosophy of watch collecting and how it relates to me and how I deal with it. But there's some fundamentals. There's watches that I need to like the look of and really sort of be attracted to it. I need to actually wear it. I don't really want watches in my collection that I'm not wearing. I don't feel... Yeah, it needs to be practical. I need to actually wear them, put them on. It needs to fit into my collection as a whole as well. I'm not really one to have too many multiples of similar style because, again, then it goes back to the other sort of thing. I don't then wear them as much. And of course, I need to be able to actually afford them too. But now I'm realizing the watches that stay in my collections versus the watches that leave my collection are the ones that I have this really strong bond with. When I sort of look at them, I get really excited, and it's almost like that honeymoon period with a new watch, but it then sort of continues past that honeymoon period. And they're the watches that stay in my collection. So I'm trying to almost recapture that with new purchases. I'm sort of taking that idea and that thought into that purchasing decision and going, am I going to have this same relationship, or could I have that same relationship? And I sort of try to achieve that with each new watch purchase.
Yeah, speaking about purchasing, new acquisitions, what do you mainly look for when you would buy a new one?
I'm looking for that connection, that wow factor. I'm looking for a watch that I look at and go, oh, I just love it. You know, when you're wearing a watch and it's not just, that's very nice. It's a watch when you're wearing it going, oh, I love that. I love that connection and that emotional sort of feeling that you get from it, because although I like a lot of the sort of theoretical ideas about watches, it's really the actual practical in your hand, on your wrist experience that really drives me to buy new watches.
Now, I have brought you in for the challenge today. Was it difficult to come up with 3?
It's very difficult because I wasn't sure if I should bring in perhaps my favorites in my collection, or the best watches in my collection, or the most expensive watches in my collection. But instead, I've sort of brought a little bit of a variety, but also 3 very important watches in my collection. And they sort of define somewhat why I collect certain watches as well. And they're also watches that have taught me lessons about how to better collect in the future and how to choose watches in the future as I go along and buy more.
Well, James, let's dive in. Where would you like to start?
I'm definitely going to start with what I think is my favorite watch, not just in my collection, but my favorite watch. And it's a watch also that has taught me so many lessons that have made me a better collector and made me buy watches that I like even more than what I probably would have bought otherwise. And it's this Hamilton here. This is a Hamilton Jazzmaster Traveller 2 GMT.
Nice.
And I love the look of it, of course. I just really like the look of it. It just suits me, and it grabs my attention. It has like a dressy, everyday feel to it, and that's what I like. And I love a dual crown. It just gives the case something a little bit extra for me. But what's really important about this watch for me is a couple of lessons that it's taught me.
Okay.
Because it is my favorite watch, and it is my favorite watch compared to any watch. Like even my Grail watches, I then come back to this one and go, oh, even though those Grail watches are much better than this Hamilton, I like this watch more. And it's even when I buy new watches now, or if I go into an AD and to look at watches, I generally wear this one.
Okay.
Because I go, this is lovely, but compared to the Hamilton, how am I feeling? But it also taught me lessons because this is not the obvious Hamilton watch. When I think of Hamilton watches, I think of field watches. There's a couple of others in their range that are fantastic watches. This is not the obvious one. And it's not that I'm trying to buy watches that aren't the obvious one. It's more the lesson of, don't just look at the obvious watches. Look beyond that. Look at what other watches companies have in their range. Look into their back catalogue And this is just that, because when I was looking for Hamilton and I liked the brand, I was thinking field watches. But then when I look beyond that, I look back into the back catalogue and what else they had to offer. This is stunning. And I just love it. And I take that lesson into my other watches that I've bought, because rather than go for the ones that I sort of think of in my head when I think about a particular brand, I then look beyond that and I find others that I like even more.
So I suppose this carries on your philosophy as where it begins for you.
And it has that real wow factor to me, and I have that absolute engagement with it. Every time I open my watch box and see this watch, I get that sort of tingly sort of, oh, I love it. It also taught me another real lesson, because I was never a big fan of any other strap beyond bracelets. I really like bracelets. Never really connected with leather straps.
Okay.
However, this one taught me the lesson.
Looks good.
It does, doesn't it? And
It's really good.
And I realized it's not leather straps I didn't like. It was particular leather straps that I didn't like. And when it's a good leather strap like that one, and that one being secondhand was already pre-worn in, which was another lesson for me with leather straps. But it just, okay, there are certain leather straps I like. And yeah, many lessons have been learned for me from this particular watch. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important, beyond just being my favorite watch.
So would you say you change the straps around a bit, or you just...
I do with this one sometimes. I actually bought the bracelet for it as well when I actually bought it, because I sort of thought I don't like leather straps very much, but I like the silver dial version of this one, so I went and bought the bracelet for it. But I actually don't wear it on the bracelet that often. I do wear it sometimes on the bracelet, but that ostrich leather strap, it just works, and pre-worn in being second-hand, and also just the quality of it, just, yeah, I love it. And I actually end up using that strap on other watches too.
So being the favourite, do you wear it the most?
It's one of my most worn watches.
Yeah.
It's hard to pick out the exact most worn watch in my collection, because I'm like some other people, which I keep going back and changing throughout the day, and depending on what I'm doing, and having the option to change that over to a bracelet is nice as well. So depending on the weather here, especially in Perth, when it gets so hot, it's nice to be able to wear it on the bracelet. But yeah, definitely one of my most worn watches. And it's definitely one of the ones I go to most if I'm going out somewhere, or even like one of our first Red Bar events we went to, that was the first watch that I wore.
Beautiful.
So the lesson I learned from this one, as I said, is looking into the back catalogue of other watches, not looking at the obvious watches. And that's exactly what I did with IWC, because as I started collecting watches, probably the least interesting type of watch for me was pilot watches.
Okay.
But it's turned out to be my favourite style of watches, which is really weird, because it's not something that I expected. So when I first bought a pilot watch, I bought something fairly affordable just to see what it was like, and I found I really connected with it. And then I thought, well, because I love pilot watches so much, I have to at least consider IWC, because they are such an iconic brand and they make some beautiful watches. But they're normal and they're obvious watches, or what I call obvious watches, as great as they are, I didn't have that real connection with. So I used the experience of that Hamilton, that idea of looking into the back catalogue of IWC to see what else they had available. And that's when I came across this Mark XVI Spitfire.
Oh, nice.
And the instant I saw this one, I knew that not only is it a watch that I absolutely adore, but it is by far my favourite IWC, beyond anything else. And it's not a new watch, it's a used watch. But compared to anything they have new, or even the other watches that they have to offer, which are lovely watches, this one, it just captures me. And I'll have to say, I like this one almost as much as the Hamilton. It's a close second, and that's saying something, and that means that this one is definitely staying in my collection long term.
Is it more like the face you're attracted to, because they're quite similar colours?
Yeah, I seem to like silver dials. I also like black dials and blue dials and other dials as well. But what I like about this one is the quality and the complexity of the dial. When you look closely at it, you'll see the different levels, you'll see the applied markers, you'll see the circular patterns in there. I like the general look of a pilot anyway, just that general style. But because it's not a normal pilot, it's more of the idea of, I think the Spitfire is to be a slightly elevated pilot, something with a little bit more oomph to it. This one has that. And when you feel that bracelet as well, it's just all the elements about it are amazing. And also how that one fits on my wrist it's magical.
Yeah, it's very well balanced. Being a second-hand watch, was it difficult to source this, or?
It took a long time, because then the problem was I wasn't able to see one in real life before I bought it. And that was a bit of a barrier for me, because if I was going to spend money, small amounts or large amounts, it's nice to be able to at least get some hands on with it before you then buy one. But I just knew I liked it, and I wasn't able to get that experience. But this one, you can find it on a bracelet, but also on a really nice leather strap. And I knew I wanted the bracelet, and because it was getting a little bit older, it was hard to find one that had all the links still in it. A lot of people are buying these and throwing away spare links for some reason. I have no idea why somebody would do that, but that's what they tend to do. So I had to then find the one that was the right price for me, the right quality, and had the bracelet with sufficient links that could fit my wrist. And I don't have a big wrist, but I wanted to ensure that it was going to fit, so I didn't have to change out to another strap, because as it's turned out, the bracelet on that is one of my favourite parts of that watch.
Do you always find it a little bit challenging, potentially buying something online if it doesn't live up to your expectations, you're not going to get what you want? Have you had any challenges there?
I think there's a lot of challenges there, but I put a huge amount of time into thinking about watches and researching the watches and watching every single video online about a particular watch. And that doesn't always give you the exact right sort of feeling about a watch, but it gives you a pretty good understanding. And it's actually one of the philosophies I've then taken to my channel, is when I'm doing a review of a watch, I really try to show the watch in as much detail, angles, close-ups, outdoor, because when other people are watching my videos, I'm assuming sometimes it's because they're thinking about buying that watch.
Yeah.
And I want them to see as much as possible. And then I point out the little details like this you may not have seen in a photo, this you may not have seen in a photo, because I want them to have that information. I want them to have a video that they're watching that I would want to watch if I was thinking about buying a watch.
Excellent, James. We appreciate your contribution to the watch community for sure.
Yeah, it's fun anyway as well. I enjoy the whole experience of making videos. But then that leads me into something else in my collection, which I've been developing, so not developing, it's something that I've been finding that is very important to me, and it's becoming more and more important to me, and that is having a watch or a couple of watches in my collection that I call my fun watches.
Okay.
Watches that sort of spark almost a youthful enthusiasm for it, because I look at this watch, I look at these two watches, and I love them, and I'm drawn to them, and I get excited about them. But watches like this one here, watches like the Accutron Spaceview 2020, there's another element. There's a wow.
I've never seen anything like this.
It's a rather interesting watch, and it's completely different to anything else I would have put in my collection or even expected to put in my collection. But there's an inner child in me that gets excited about that watch. And that's why I call it my fun watch. And I think a fun watch is an important watch to have in a collection. And it can be anything. It could just be a colourful dial. But it's something that's beyond, like, as much as I love these watches, they are fairly traditional style looking watches. That's not a traditional looking watch.
No.
And it just brings out some excitement in me.
And the face is quite large. How do you go?
It's a big watch. Like I said, I've only got a medium wrist, but as long as it's not overhanging my wrist, then I'm okay with it, especially if it's a particular watch that kind of suits that. If it was more of a traditional style watch that then was large, it may feel wrong, but because it's so different. And then with this particular watch, when you delve into how it was made, because this is powered by a system that no other watch is powered by.
Okay.
It has that initial fun, it has that initial quality, it has something that grabs my attention, but then when you look into the technical aspects of this one, it kind of blows your mind. It's amazing. It's worth watching a video about it. I'm not going to try and explain it because I'm probably going to get it wrong, but it's got to do with static electricity, and there's a generator in there, and I do want to show you, because when you then start to shake this one up, because it is, it's not a quartz watch, it's not a mechanical watch, it's something else. You'll see this generator start spinning, and then the second hand starts going. And that is because it's conserving energy from those static generators that are down the bottom of the watch. And then it starts off, and you'll see the second hand's running slow because it's catching up to the correct time, and then it'll start moving at full pace. And that adds another element to this particular watch and why it excites me so much and why it's in my collection and why I really wanted to share it with you today.
So how did you come across this watch?
That's one that I saw on YouTube, and it excited me, but because of the expense of it, because I hadn't seen it, because I hadn't worn it, I wasn't going to buy it. But then recently, last year, I was on a trip to Sydney, and it was sitting at a second-hand watch shop. It's a new watch, but it was in this amazing watch store, my favourite watch store I've ever been to, because it has brand new watches and it has this lovely range of second-hand watches as well. And when that one was there, next to all these much sort of more expensive watches, there was APs and things which I tried on, which were awesome, but that grabbed my attention. I tried it on, and then I went for a walk, went down to the harbour, went down to the Opera House, and I said to my wife, let's go back to that shop because I need to look at that watch again.
You keep thinking about it, it's meant to be.
Kept thinking about it. And it's a watch I wear a lot as well, because I was a little bit worried, because as much as I love it, I still want to wear it. And just because it's fun doesn't mean I will wear it, but it absolutely has turned out to be a watch that I wear a lot.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you actually, being your fun watch, what kind of occasions would you wear it for?
Any occasion. I don't tend to pick a watch too much a specific occasion. Sometimes I'll pick it because if it's a hot day, I don't want to wear a leather strap. No. That might sort of stop me wearing a watch. But beyond that, it's more about just what watch I want to wear. And, I'm sort of pretty quite happy wearing a dress watch in a casual environment. I'm happy wearing a casual watch in a sort of dressy sort of environment as well, as long as it's the one I want to wear.
Thank you, James, for sharing the stories behind your collection. So where would you say, watch collecting is at for you, I guess? Are you happy with the current state? Any proposed changes?
I really like the watches I have now. I've sort of evolved it into a collection that everyone has that sort of wow factor and that sort of emotional involvement for me. So to add something else to it, it needs to be something extra special. But I have to say it's probably slightly bigger than I want my current collection. So it's something that I think over the next year or two, I'll probably will shrink a little bit and maybe sort of try to think about what I would like there. But I'm also having this YouTube channel, it kind of gives me the opportunity to own more watches than I actually need, and gives me that sort of motivation to, I just like that one, even though I know I'm probably not going to keep it long term. It just gives me that opportunity to be able to buy that and justify it to myself, which, as I said, it's probably one of my primary reasons for having a YouTube channel, is to give myself that excuse to buy watches. So I'll probably end up sort of almost separating my collection into my core collection, which are these are my watches that I'll wear all the time, versus maybe these are slightly more temporary watches that I buy because I really love them, but I sort of buy them knowing that they're likely to end up going out of the collection.
So James, I'm going to throw in a bit of a fun question, as I do to all my interviewees. Your Holy Grail, what is it?
There's a couple that I have, but there's one particular one that I absolutely adore, and I actually got to try it on this morning because it's this watch here. It's the Groenfeld 1941, which apparently is the case. This one, as well as the Alenghi Odysseus, are my two sort of Grail watches because they're beautiful. They have this same sort of dressy, everyday element that I just really like about watches. It's something that really captures my attention. I'm a huge fan of the sub-second registry down there at 6 o'clock, and it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous watch, and it's so beautiful to be able to actually get hands-on with this one as well, because I have looked at many pictures, I've watched many videos about this one, so to actually be able to see it and even try it on has been quite an experience for me. And that Odysseus as well is also, you can see when you look at both of these watches, they have these sort of similar elements which seem to speak to me.
Let's do a quick wrist check.
So as I was talking earlier, this is actually my father's watch. This is the Seiko 6139. I call it the Pogue, but it's the Australian version of the Pogue. This one was released in the 70s. This one's from 1976. And my dad actually bought this one in the very early 80s. So he bought it secondhand himself. And then when I really fell back in love with watches and this sort of fell down this rabbit hole, as we like to say, I knew that this watch still existed, because every time I saw my dad, I knew where it was and I went and saw it. And this thing was looking very rough. So I had it restored.
Yeah.
And it's been a really big part of my collection. It's certainly a keystone or a cornerstone of my collection. It's one of the reasons why there are watches in my collection, because of this particular one. And I think it's one of the reasons, or the main reason, why I like mechanical watches so much, because just being captivated as a kid, seeing that in the 80s when I was a little kid, and just going, wow, in shaking, and you can hear the movement. My dad explains to me how this thing is working. My dad doing things with it he shouldn't have been doing, which I've now learnt and told him off about, but that's okay. It was a watch that he then wore, and it's nice. He's still around, thankfully, but it's nice that I have something from him that he actually wore. Although I don't wear this one a huge amount, it's something that's quite special, and it's something that I do look at a lot every time I open up my watch collection. It is something that I wear occasionally, and it sort of also brings me back to sort of vintage watches as well, which I like, but I'm a little bit concerned about having too many in my collection. It's just nice having something that's not a new watch, but something that's also wearable and usable in day-to-day life.
Beautiful. So I'm wearing the Larique Etude watch today.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's really nice to see that. Something very different as well that I haven't seen before as well. Can I have a look? Yeah, I do like, wow, yeah. I am just mystified by these mechanical movements. I'm just captivated by them. It's lovely to look at them. What a beautiful looking watch.
This is actually a bespoke piece. So a bunch of watch nerds around the world, they all got together on WhatsApp and they created this baby.
That's that one.
It is.
I'm well aware of this one. I've watched a number of videos about this particular watch.
James, it's been an absolute pleasure having you in the studio today. And thank you for sharing the stories behind your amazing collection. And guys, be sure to check out James' YouTube channel, Watching James. If you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did, please help us out by hitting that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the next 3 watch collection.